Hello, hello. We are the TransPositions. I'm now all blurry again. Can't win for trying.
The
Fix it,
camera
fix it.
loves your microphone.
hmm It's like, ooh, I want to focus on that right there because it's more important than the person talking in the background. Apparently, hello
That's
and
right.
welcome, ladies. I was out last week, but apparently y'all did a show that was that did all right.
We did.
We
did.
do that
Yeah.
from time to time. Yeah.
We did. Carly got sleepy.
Aw.
It's true.
Because I was out like a light. I that week has been these last 2 weeks have been difficult between covering all the stuff that's happened and all the different things that's gone on. I mean, I've been going at it like literally a story a day clip for Outsports just about. But the
I
good
can
news is tonight.
imagine.
But tonight we have a Transposition Sports. It's publishing as we speak right now. It's good 28 minutes of stuff where we're going to look back we're going to look back at some things, and we are going to look at some of the things that have happened this week because we've had some seismic shifts in the place that in the landscape in the last week, but also tonight we're going to give a glimpse, we're going to give you a piece of transport's history that's still doing great things out in the world. One of the first student athletes to compete under the now defunct NCAA transgender inclusion policy. We kind of catch up to him in the sense of it's sort of a where is he now? And he's doing some great things. He's a neighbor of mine in Connecticut, and he's doing some great things. And this past week, during an important hearing over a constitutional amendment that's pending in Connecticut, he made his voice heard by speaking at a hearing over a constitutional amendment that's being proposed that would codify full protections for sexual orientation, gender identity, and a guarantee of bodily autonomy for every citizen of the state in our state's constitution. The hearings for that for last week, he was one of the people that spoke. We're going to be giving you some of that and more coming up on Transposition Sports a little bit later.
All right, and me and you will be flying as a duo at the end of the show because these two got to go do some different stuff. One of them's got to go snooze, and the other one's got to go. Well, they got a secret mission that I'm not allowed to talk about.
I've got to go spread some love in my adopted hometown.
Hand out hearts and flowers.
Hand out some stuff. Portland, Maine started this tradition in 1976. It's the first city to do it.
I'd like to pour.
So when people wake up on Valentine's Day, they see hearts all over this city on every door throughout the town. And the Valentine Bandit has been a tradition for the last coming up on 50 years. And it's a good tradition. That's all I'll say.
Hell yeah.
Well, since we got such short time with y'all, I do want to go ahead and jump right into things. So the first thing I want to bring up is something that Ben was posted in the TransPositions Discord server, and we have a Discord server where lots of cool stuff can be found and shared, and we have everything from gender affirming care information to changing your passport information, all this important stuff. But we have some cool people that hang out in there too, and one of them's Dr. Ben, who was in the U.S. Army and brought this to our attention. Trans Military Voices. It's this great book that just came out, and you can order it. With valor and visibility, with honor and integrity. The next chapter of transgender military service and transgender troops in their own words. These are available on Amazon. You can get it signed by Bree Fram, who's the author, one of the authors on both of these. Oh yeah, is she the editor?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're
Yeah.
essays written by the service
Yeah.
members themselves.
So, yeah, the person who put this together for us, not the author. I'm going to just read a quick breakdown published in 2025, featuring 47 stories from transgender service members and veterans. These accounts offer an unfiltered view of what it means to serve as a transgender individual in the U.S. military. From inspiring triumphs to heart-rending struggles, these stories shine a light on our communities navigating service under the shadow of uncertainty. Captured during a time when the very existence of transgender people in the military and public life was under intense scrutiny, these narratives reflect courage in the face of fear. Each contributor chose to share their truth despite the risk, challenging stereotypes, and exposing the reality of their experience. And then this volume here is published in 2021, featuring 26 essays from current service members and veterans. This eye-opening volume shows what it's like to serve in the military as a transgender person. Contributors share their experiences before and during the Trump administration's ban, including what barriers they faced at work, why they do or don't choose to serve openly, and how their colleagues have treated them. So this is the previous volume, and this is the newer volume here, but you can get them both right here. So I wanted to start with something that felt good, that felt good to talk about, because basically the rest of the stuff I have for you guys today, to be frank, it's not gonna be pleasant.
It's
Oh,
not gonna be
good.
heartwarming. Well, one thing
No.
that's really that it was a piece of good news that I ran across this week is that the Department of Defense is slow walking all of this stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that just
We
shows
don't wanna-
you where the professionals stand in this regards. Military professionals, people who count on the readiness of our forces to defend our country, they stand with us, and they will be standing with us until they can't
All right.
anymore.
I got to give you guys a trigger warning. Something gonna pop up on the screen that might upset some people. There's gonna be some slurs heard. I just
good.
don't want anybody to be
we
caught
gonna-
off guard.
Are we gonna do some Nancy Mace tonight?
We are
we
doing.
gonna
We
hear
are
some
tearing.
Are we gonna
We
hear
are tearing
Nancy
into
Mace?
that. Yeah, into that woman.
Because I'm gonna right now. The most brutal, savage takedown at Nancy Mace. I heard it. Giselle did a brutal takedown on Nancy Mace. It was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. I figure we'll do this week. We'll do Nancy Mace, and then next week we can do Mary Miller, just to make sure that Mary's not left out, because she's been running her mouth too. The Hitler quoting Mary Miller. I didn't bring that in today because we just had too much. Nancy Mace is enough. One is enough. And we got some.
Yeah.
But Mary Miller, the way that she introduced Sarah McBride on the House floor and stuff like that, we do have to talk about that. We're just not going to be able to squeeze it in today, but it will rear its ugly head. 'Cause I'm sure Mary Miller is going to keep it going because she's trying to compete with these Congress bitches like
It's hard to keep
Mace,
up.
Obert,
It is.
and Green. Anyway, let's listen to this rant, and we can commentary after it finishes. It's only 44 seconds, so. Transpositions, ladies, bite your tongue.
USAID awarded $2 million to strengthen trans-led organizations to deliver gender-affirming health care in Guatemala. So to each of you this morning, does this advance the interests of American citizens paying for trannies in Guatemala to the tune of $2 million?
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, sir.
The gentlelady has used a phrase that is considered a slur in the LGBTQ community and the transgender community. And let me please finish without interruption. And
Tranny. I don't really care. You want penises in women's bathrooms, and
Chairman.
I'm not going to have it.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Let
It's
Chairman,
let the,
disgusting.
Bitch,
So-
bitch, bitch.
So, friends,
Asshole.
we need to get some grown-ups back in the room. Could you imagine if there's been a slur for any other demographic?
Any other demographic. But
There-
also, didn't she just violate the executive order to not mention the forbidden people?
Yeah, well.
Like,
Send her to
Well,
get
no,
no.
she's got legislative immunity there. I mean, she gets off the
See,
hook and say whatever the fuck she wants.
Apparently.
You know what?
she
I'm ready to promote that Jasmine Crockett Nancy Mace title fight.
Yeah.
I'm ready to promote that fight. I just want to see that happen. I would love to.
Oh,
Slap the
Crockett would
taste
knock
out of
her
her mouth.
block off.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I'd like to see McBride do it. I'd like to see Nancy McBride just haul off and just slap the taste out her mouth. I would love to see
Yeah.
it.
Oh, Sarah
But
McBride?
you see, but this goes.
That would be pretty epic. But you know,
Tsunami in the
Nancy's-
chat has it right.
If there's
It's a C word,
somebody
but it's
who-
not cis. You know, which
If
is-
there,
Right?
if there's somebody who deserves Preston Brooks, if there's somebody who deserves a Preston Brooks caning, it's Nancy Mace. Nancy Mace
Well,
deserves that. There's
That's going to
someone
be
who deserves-
historic. That's going to be a historic moment as future generations are going to look back on that video clip the same way that we look back on George Wallace's segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever, or whatever
Except
he
more ridiculous and more fucking cringe. But that's not
Yeah.
all she's been up to lately.
no.
Earlier this week,
of course the fine Confederate representative from South Carolina. I'm just wondering. I mean, I wonder what other slurs she. Oh, here we go. Here we.
Oh, Nancy Mace. She's Nancy Mace, but she thinks she's Nancy Drew because she's gone. Suddenly, she's gone with this. She's dived into this hyper left wing side of research with this White Coat Labs, who are like an animal rights advocacy group who don't like lab animals. And I have mixed feelings about lab animals. I think that we're getting to a point where we can model most stuff without lab animals. But I digress. It's something we've been using for hundreds of years to test medications and medicines. And they found out that not only are they testing medications and medicines for cis people, they're testing medications and medicine for trans people too. Oh my gosh. It's just the worst thing that's ever happened. Let's see what the Daily Beast had to say about this. This is Will Neal reporting on this. Republican South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace tested out her latest attack on transgender people during Saturday's appearance on Fox News. In an interview with host Laura Ingraham, Mace claimed that she uncovered a $10 million federal program for making animals trans, as she lauded President Trump's directives aimed at drastically cutting government spending. In this information is being exposed by the American people, and I am grateful for it, said Mace. As you have to ask yourself, why are all these Democrats having such a meltdown over exposing the waste and fraud and abuse within these government programs? Okay, I'm gonna take a break right here to talk about what she said so far, and I want to say that to the tune of that $10 million in medical research for a 1% of the population seems like a pretty low number to expect to spend on medical research for our healthcare. I don't think that's out of the question, but let's keep in mind that they are also spent $400 million to order Cybertrucks for the military. Now, Cybertrucks can't survive a car wash, but we're going to send them to a war zone. I want to keep that in mind as we complain about government spending. $400 million on Cybertrucks that are just basically lawn ornaments because they last a couple months. They short out. You get them wet. They can't take it. They can't drive off road at all. They're pavement princesses. All right.
There was the story earlier this week about a Cybertruck using the drive assist feature. It slammed into a light pole all by itself.
Yeah.
And the owner praised Tesla for the wonderful airbags or something. Like,
This
Dude,
is how stupid these
crashed
people
because
are.
of this
The
nonsense.
buy-in on some of this stuff is just so unbelievably rich. It's like, really? But all I've got to say about Ms. Mace's, Congresswoman Mace's, that I'm sorry, position here is nothing illustrates how little she thinks of us as people than her position here. We are to some people like Congresswoman Mace, we are not human beings worthy of any kind of dignity, respect, healthcare, anything. She's bought in to what Michael Walsh said. And I'm sorry, who was that asshole?
Matt Walsh?
Knowles, Michael Knowles. No,
Michael
Michael
Knowles.
Knowles
Oh.
said, transgenderism? No, you did mean eliminate transgender people. That's what you meant. That's what you know you meant. That's how you said it. Now it's getting real. Now shit's getting real.
Mace also heaped praise on DOGE director Elon Musk and slammed Democrat Rep. Maxine Waters for attempting to impede DOGE's audit of the Department of Education. In a viral clip, a security guard stopped Waters and several other Democratic representatives from gaining access to the department building in Washington, D.C. If this was reversed and a male conservative congressman was yelling in the face of a female security guard during the Democrat administration, what do you think the reaction would be? Asked Ingram, which is an idiotic question. Ingram doesn't have any smart questions, though.
Always with the fucking what ifs.
But the thing about Doggy is that they are hacking into our government systems without any kind of congressional clearance at all. It's Elon Musk and a team of just fresh out of college kids, and they're accessing
some not even out of college. Some just getting into college. I mean, the youngest one is 19 years old. Accessing our social security information, our banking information, our federal spending information that they don't have clearance for. And the stuff that you'll see, these lists that they're bringing up of the fraud, waste, and abuse that they believe they found, and it's just foreign aid. Well, they're experts in fraud, waste, and abuse because A, they're frauds. Second of all, they're wasteful as fuck. And third of all, they like to abuse people just for the fun of it. They're the kinds of people that enjoyed tearing the wings off flies just to see what would happen. Right.
But all of that goes way the hell off. You could spend weeks chasing your tail about all the unrelated nonsense where there's different casts of characters. I mean, I'm sure this article is about Mace's interview and all the various batshit crazy stuff she said. But there's a lot that's distracting away from the nonsense about the mind.
And for any people that are watching this later, either now or later, that think I'm, she's being overly aggressive and exaggerating. No, I'm not. I really am not. No, this is affecting people's lives. What you're watching is no goddamn joke. Because if you don't understand that. If you don't understand that, then you really need to, talk to a trans person. Our choices at this point are limited to one: disappear. Don't care how you do it, just disappear. Pass, go back into a closet. Just don't make us bother our pretty little heads about your existence in the world. So that's a shitty position to take towards any human being. She didn't just take this to Laura Ingram's show, though. She took it to the U.S. Congress and took the transgender mice argument all the way up to Congress. She says, "Why is our federal government spending taxpayer dollars to create transgender animals?" Which by this she means testing the efficacy of
the medications that we use as transgender people on
no, that's not what she's talking about. The report that she brought before Congress that ostensibly she's talking about on Fox News was
Are you
about
gonna bring up the transgenic thing?
animals.
That's to be debunked, though. The stuff that she brought up was about. I looked into that because I saw a whole bunch of people making that claim too. That they're talking about transgenic animals. Actually, I even shared it, but like when I was investigating to bring up today's show, and I looked at the labs that they were looking into, it is about giving animals hormones and things like that, and also neutering animals and giving them different hormones. So
I haven't seen a thing about that.
Well, I got it right here. This is going to break some of it down. Although nearly every issue sparked partisan outcries, both Democrats and Republicans on the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee seemed united that something needs to change. Why the federal? Okay, that's where I was. Wondered Nancy Mace, the South Carolina Republican who called last week hearing at the chair of the Government Innovation Subcommittee. It's a great question. I wonder why they're making cats constipated also. It's a question that rings around my head, added Justin Goodman, Senior Vice President at the White Coat Waste Project, which exposed animal testing projects. His group claimed the National Institute of Health has spent at least $240 million over the years in grants on transgender animal experiments, including $26 million in current active projects. In a lot of these cases, they involve mice, rats, and monkeys, which are standard model organisms for human pharmaceutical testing. Okay, so this isn't anything out of the ordinary for how medicine works. Okay, continuing on, monkeys who are being surgically mutilated, and by surgically mutilated, they mean neutered.
Oh my fucking God.
Spayed. Surgically mutilated and subject to hormone therapies to mimic female to male or male to female gender transitions. So yes, so it's like neutering a male mice and then giving it estrogen treatments, and then in that way, it's in a condition that we can test other medications and say, hey, is it safe for a male to female transition person to take this medication in conjunction with their gender affirming health care? Is it safe? Is this safe and efficacious? I think that's the word. But anyway,
Efficacious.
Efficacious. There you go.
So I think that Nancy Mace needs to reread the Bible and see how Philip interacted with the Ethiopian eunuch.
It's so funny that the
goddamn woman.
That this lab and this investigation stuff is very left wing. They're just against animal testing. It's a very liberal movement. It's a very leftist kind of movement to oppose animal testing. Right? That's generally animals are considered are here for our use or whatever. It's not a lot of animal rights advocacy on that end of the spectrum. But researchers then use them to study the effects of gender transition information that could be useful to humans. Yeah, the previous Biden administration mandated that federally funded hospitals perform surgical interventions to alter the human body's appearance to mimic that of complaining about people getting gender affirming care. Okay, suck it up, bitch. You don't get to decide whether or not we get health care. That's the thing. That's the problem. Is the Republicans want to say no? I don't want any kind of health care allowed for transgender people at all.
What they're really looking to do is take away everyone's health care. See, health care for them is a commodity, and that's what the bigger issue is. The bigger issue to me is if they can deny health care to me, they can deny it to everyone else, and that's what they're steadily doing. You see, Donald Trump said he had a concept. Once they got rid of the Affordable Care Act. You know what their concept is? The same Republican program it's always been. We don't care.
Privatize healthcare if you can't afford your medication? Fuck you.
Oh, no.
You can't afford your...
We don't... No, I call it we don't care. We don't...
You're sick.
Listen to
Carly,
Medicare.
you're really
You don't
quiet.
care.
You're really, really quiet, Carly.
I mean, that's what they're.
I don't know if we
don't
can
care.
turn her
I
up.
mean, when it comes down to it, we just don't care. We could care
she's all the
less
way up.
about.
Yeah, I know.
That's what the whole game is. We just don't care.
That's better. There we go.
Yeah, no. It's the same thing with the pro-life movement. They don't care. They don't want people to be able to have abortions, just like they don't want anybody to have any other medical procedure. But they don't want to help take care of that babies. I was watching Matthews that guy who does the trolls, different like right-wing events and parades and stuff. He tried to get people at a pro-life event to try to sign a petition the other day for student lunches, and he got like 7 signatures out of all the people he talked to. They don't care about the people. They care about the profit. They care about someone's ability to make money off of the medical services more than they do that the person who needs the medical service gets them done.
That's, that was the crux of my earlier rant. They certainly don't care about us as people. It's an eliminationist program, and if that sits well with anybody, I don't know what to tell you. It's crazy.
That's what most people get.
And then it goes on to talk about just the different types of experiments. But there was one that I wanted to get down to. In this case, they just throw DEI on the front of everything. So what the hell does these experiments have to do with DEI? It's not DEI to understand how different medications works for different demographics of your population. Is it DEI for them to look into medicines that affect, let's say,
they don't want to help
Black community?
They don't want to help the Black. They don't want to help the Black mice. That's what it is.
Right.
There you
See,
go.
they want to segregate the mice.
Like, would they?
That's all.
They're just one. This is one step away from being like, you know what? What's the condition? Like, was it congenital heart disease or whatever's higher in the Black population? They're like, oh well, that's DEI research to research into that because it affects Black people more than anybody else. It's that kind of ridiculous argument. All right. In the case of DEI grants, were used to fund a lot of this stuff. So people who abuse animals find some kind of excuse to bring in new money, and they'll switch their research over to something that's trendy to bring in tax dollars. People who abuse animals. He's talking again about the pharmaceutical industry, how medicine is currently handled. She's talking to like a PETA type person, right? And I'm not saying they're wrong that these programs are going on, but I'm just saying that the fact that they're acting like these programs are some big red flag or something that we test medicine on lab animals, that the left has been ringing the bell about that for decades now, at least since the 60s. All right. What else do we got? As we go through that list of things that they spend money on, though, and that the Republicans are claiming are fraud, race, and abuse. Stuff like this comes up. Like a trans opera infuriates President Trump.
For fuck's sake.
He knows what opera is?
Trump is a huge opera fan. He's a huge live musical fan. Oh yeah, like when you go to a Trump event and they play like Phantom of the Opera and stuff, he's like really into.
Oh, that's why he wanted to take over the Kennedy Center.
He's a New York City queen. He really is. He goes to the opera and all that. All right, let's dig our teeth into this though, because we're running out of time here. As a so-called a so-called trans opera performed in Colombia in 2022 has angered Donald Trump's administration in the U.S. The White House said the musical is an example of waste of United States Agency for Independent Development funds in the U.S., $47,000 of which were used to finance the work. So to put it in perspective again, remember how much $400 million for the Cybertrucks for the Army, right? For the dead paperweights, giant paperweights for the Army, $400 million, but $47,000 to sent to Colombia if they use it on this opera. But we're going to find out more details about this.
I wonder if he's going to create an executive order that excises "As You Like It" from the Shakespearean canon somehow or another. Jesus fucking Christ! What an asshole! Jeez.
The press secretary of the U.S. government, Caroline Leavitt, said yesterday that USAID has squandered resources in countries where it has presence. She gave the Colombian musical. She gave. I know. I feel like we're on crazy pills listening to this stuff. She gave the Colombian musical as an example of the type of work that her government's new anti-diversity order was putting to an end. As one, the Colombian trans opera that infuriated Trump, the rejection of diversity policies, together with the fight against irregular immigration and economic protectionism, is a key principle of Trump's new U.S. administration. Soon after taking office, Trump announced the freezing of U.S. aid, foreign assistance to recipient countries around the world, including Colombia, the cause of concern in recipient countries owing to the economic fallout and impact on development and humanitarian programs. A few hours later, the Trump administration justified its controversial decisions by listing a series of U.S. aid-funded initiatives around the world, which it considered to be waste of resources. Among these was an opera in Colombia, which tells the story of the evolution of a transgender artist. According to Trump, $47,000 of U.S. aid fund has been used to finance the show. Oh, Laura Kaminsky as one is based on a script by Mark Campbell and Kimberly Reed and was performed in Bogota Theater Libre de Chapinero in 2022. The dramatic musical enjoyed several runs in the Colombian capital that year. According to the Colombian newspaper El Tiempo, it was adapted by the city's prestigious private university of the Andes after it won a 2021 award for opera, Zarzuela, and operetta presented by the Philharmonic Orchestra of Bogota. Shortly after it premiered, the U.S. Embassy of Colombia awarded the show the resources necessary to put it on at the Teatro Theater, or Teatro Libre. Later, it was screened in the city's opera and the Park Initiative. So far, it's basically saying we give foreign aid to Colombia, and they decided to use it towards the arts, and it made Trump mad because the arts was included trans people.
Somebody had to translate that for Donald, right? I mean, it's not an English production here. I mean, what the hell? Somebody somewhere in the world is involving trans people in the arts. And so that's enough to get the guy. The man's the most powerful man in the goddamn world, and he's got to worry about that. How fucking obsessed do you have to be with trans people that every little thing is somehow or another a fucking affront to your own damn vanity? Holy Christ, dude, get a life.
And this list that they put out, they just slap DEI and transgender on the front of everything and anything. So because we give foreign aid to a country, and that country gives grants to the arts, and because the theater that was putting on the production, put on a production that was about trans people, which the U.S. is funding trans opera in Colombia, and that's the way it's being spun. It's ridiculous, but it's not just trans it's not just that opera, right? These are some of the things the organization says that we're spending money on. 1.5 million to promote DEI in Serbia. Who knows what the fuck that means? Promote DEI in Serbia. Maybe we need to go through this list point by point, but just looking at the first bullet point with this, which was this Colombian opera, and understanding what the hell they were talking about, I'm annoyed. It's like, yes, we can give money to a country, and that country can give grants to their arts, and the arts can use that grant money to put on a play, and that play can have transgender people in it. And it's,
given Serbia's attachment to genocide throughout its history, I'm not really sure. What the fuck?
Yeah. Well, we got a DEI musical in Ireland. A DEI musical in Ireland. What do you think that is? And again, this is just meaning that we get that our foreign aid went to Ireland, and someone in Ireland put on a play that was put on with government funding that had a black person in it. That's what DEI musical in Ireland means. 47,000. There's our trans opera.
There was a black person in that musical.
That's the whole point of this. Yeah, the DEI musical. It had multi-ethnic people represented in it, and that's why they're mad about it.
Also, in other words, they followed the lead of Riverdance. Because remember, hey, Riverdance found about old girl here in the States, young African American woman who was Irish dancing to Megan Thee Stallion, and everybody and the Riverdance producer liked it so much that he invited her on tour with Riverdance.
That's pretty awesome, actually. But then they got 32,000 for a transgender comic strip in Peru. Not to clarify what this is, the transgender, and I only looked up the transgender stuff in the DEI musical. But for the transgender comic strip, it's that we give federal aid to Peru, and the Peruvian government has a publication that they print. That publication has a comic strip that's printed in it. That comic strip happened to have transgender people in it. And that's what they're mad about. So, because the publication funded by the Peruvian government prints up newspaper that has a comic strip with trans people in it, that means that our federal aid is going to that. That means they take that money that America is giving specifically and put it towards that comic strip specifically.
I just want $32,000 to do what Trump is.
I just want to quote our dear friend Katie Montgomery's favorite saying: "Transphobia rots your brain." Yeah, it's fucking. This is crazy stuff.
Yeah, much, doesn't it? It does rot your.
All right. Well, Ember, you have a good night. Thank you so much for sticking around with us. I know there's been a kind of a lot to go through. I'm feisty because I missed last week and I had all this built up inside of me. It was ready to pop. But yeah, this is the list, and this is a gish gallop of a list because you have to go through and pick each one of these apart and figure out what the hell they're talking about, how they're spinning the fact that we are funding with federal aid these countries, and they have the audacity to say, "Hey, trans people exist."
Laura's making a great point in the side chat here, saying, "Can I point out that there's no evidence that any of these USAID grants exist at all? It's only claims from Musk and company."
Right.
This is all just horseshit. It's all horseshit. It is flooding the zone. It is what Steve Bannon said they were going to do. That's what they're doing.
This is literally a gish gallop. This list is a gish gallop of nonsense to make opposition pick through. How many times this week I've been in a conversation with somebody about the state of our government under this doggy, whatever, Doge or whatever they want to call themselves, that people have dropped this list in my lap and saying, justify the spending. When there's no proof that the spending is real, but if you look at what they're talking about when they say And again, that's the link. These things actually exist. You know, the opera exists, the comic strip exists, but that's
Right.
not. There's no link between the U.S. funding that we send to them. It's basically saying
course
we
not.
need to stop. We need to stop sending funding to these nations if they're going to continue to support trans people. That's what it's. That's the bottom line. It's like these people are supporting trans people. These people are supporting DEI. We need to stop funding them now because they are too progressive for us. They're too woke. All right, let's move on to the next topic here. I think you all both have something to say about this.
All right, let's go.
All right, here we go. So Trump's new passport rules are trapping transgender Americans in bureaucratic limbo. When Mary Fox went to apply for her passport, she brought copies of her birth certificate, certificate of legal name, driver's license, and a check. But the State Department website said passport fees had to be paid by cash or check. They took Apple Pay. Fox, a transgender woman, told Vox, "I was worried about that. Worried about the wrong things." Fox handed over the documents, paid, and received a slip for pickup of her passport after January 28th. And time for travel she had planned early in February. But when Fox returned on the 29th, the agency official said there was a problem in the system. "We don't have authorization right now to issue a passport," he told her in a recording of the conversation, which Vox has reviewed. Fox asked if he knew how long it would be until she'd be able to get one. "Unfortunately not. There's no time frame," he told her. Fox had expected that there might be an issue with getting her passport with a female gender marker in light of President Donald Trump's Day 1 executive order, which required the government-issued documents reflect a person's sex at conception. The conception terminology reflected new influence of anti-abortion movement, which seeks to ascribe full legal personhood to an embryo from their earliest stage. Fox was ultimately fined with being issued a passport with a male gender marker, telling Vox that being able to travel is more important than the letter on a piece of paper. "I don't care what marker you put on it," she said to the agency official, according to the record. "See, from my perspective, all I want is any passport that has my legal name on it." But Fox was ultimately told that the agency couldn't issue her any passport, male or female. "So I can't leave the country?" Fox asked incredulously. "I can't answer that question," the official replied. Fox shared her story on TikTok, where it went viral, and she was ultimately able to collect her new ID documents, albeit with the male identifying marker, on February 3rd. Many others have encountered similar bewildering bureaucratic limbo with no such resolution. These restrictions on transgender people's passports, just one part of a broader campaign by new administration to intimidate transgender Americans, affects more than just the international travel. Passports are frequently used for domestic purposes, such as applying for jobs, housing, loans, and other government benefits.
Okay, so I got to go real quick here. So I'm going to try to get my thoughts in, specifically on this particular topic. First of all, please realize there were no gender markers at all on passports prior to 1970. I believe 1978. None. There were no gender markers on passports. So again, these are documents that are identity documents. The people that are screaming about identity politics are the people that are insisting on identities that do not reflect individuals' identities on documents. They are insisting that your identity has to match my perception of your identity. And that's insane. It's cray-cray.
So I'll leave you with a good story here, staff, that you can step out on. Massachusetts town votes to become a transgender sanctuary city after wild city council meeting. One Worcester resident warned the city should prepare for trans people to make this a very unsafe space if the resolution didn't pass. Let's see. I want to hear what this person says.
Way to go, Worcester. Way to go, Worcester, Mass.
Worcester.
Caraloha transforms
Awesome.
self-replenishing bamboo into
Oh, come on.
sustainable bamboo viscose.
See, this is why I don't
fabric,
like using
and
their
apparel.
players.
Our bamboo viscose fabrics are
I don't
twice as
want
soft.
skip ad. There we
I
go.
need the city to protect me because the federal government won't. And if you think you're afraid of Trump, you should see how afraid of Trump I am.
Can you wrap up, please?
Yes, I can.
Worcester.
If you say that you're afraid of Trump and that's why you don't want the city to be a safe space for trans people, you better prepare for trans people to make this a very unsafe space. I'm multiply disabled. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder that causes me immense physical pain. I'm on the autism spectrum, and I have narcolepsy, and I couldn't drive myself here, so I had to hide from my driver that I was in drag.
I'm shaking right now. I don't want to be here.
Please.
I'm sorry, am I taking too long pleading for my life? Can you look at me and tell me how many of my friends need to die before you do anything?
Please wrap up.
Look at me!
Okay, we're all done here.
I speak as both the B and the T in the LGBT.
It's my day off. I do not want to be in your DMs. I do not want to be in your email inboxes. I do not want my creativity writing diss tracks like Kendrick. I don't want to spend an hour applying glitter on my face so that you will hear and see me.
Let us remember that the Nazis burned the books that the Nazis burned books on gender sciences first. Now the administration has villainized and marginalized migrant workers, trans, LGBT people, and even special needs, denying life-saving and affirming care.
All right. So,
well, hooray for Worcester. I'm glad to see that happening in my native land. Native Bostonian myself, but
how do you say it? Because I say Worcester. I'm from the Midwest, though.
It is definitely not Worcester.
Yeah,
or
Worcester.
Worcester. It's Worcester.
Worcester.
But
I'm going to right now. I'm gonna head to my.
I'm glad to see God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. God save Worcester. God save Boston. And I'm just hopeful that more places, more people will stand up and stand with us. We need all the help we can get right now.
Yeah, because right now you can stand on the floor of Congress and shout slurs about us without any kind of repercussions at all. Name any other demographic of people in the country right now that you could do that about. I challenge anybody to go on the floor of Congress and say a slur for any other group of people besides trans people and see what happens.
Now, with all of that said, I do have to leave, and I just want to leave with a couple of words. What I'm going out to do is spread love and understanding with my friends and carry it to a whole city, a whole community. I'm doing it because I love my community. I love my country. And it is with great, great sadness that I see my country going this way. It doesn't need to be this way. Valentine's Day is tomorrow. And it's not just one day. Good night.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Steph. You have a good night. Enjoy your shenanigans out on the town. Love you. Happy Valentine's Day. Yes. Got to do our hearts. All right. So, and then there were two, but you know what? We're going to be popping into good news right now anyway. And then when we get back from that, we'll have TransPositions Sports, and then I'll close out the show with a couple of happier stories. So stick around. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it, Carly, unless you had some final words about the sanctuary city or anything else we've covered tonight.
Thank you, Worcester. That's all I can say about that. Thank you, Worcester. And I can tell you what, my favorite lesbian bar in Worcester, especially during March Madness, I'm going to drop a lot of money there because I know it is time for us as a community to go back to the old familiar places where we've been wanted. It is time for us to, in effect, close ranks and not hide, but instead get that old Sylvester album, dance in the darkness, but show up in the light, and show up as ourselves.
All right, you know what else it's time for? It is time for good news. Here we go.
The following letter was published in the National Women's Law Center. To protect the child's safety, the name of the staffer who authored the piece has been withheld. It's called A Letter to My Transgender Daughter. Parenting involves confronting fear on many levels. A piece of your heart is out in the world, and you have little to no control over what the world will do. When I was just a few years into my parenting journey, I realized my child was on a path I had never traveled and knew next to nothing about. I hope that by sharing the story of what I learned on this journey by her side, and usually several steps behind, I will help others. And so I'm starting with this public letter to my daughter. The morning after the election, I went in to wake you for school and told you that Donald Trump had won a second term. You lay back down and curled into a ball. With tears running down your cheeks, you asked me questions about what would happen next. The next night, you woke up in the middle of the night from a nightmare. In it, Donald Trump had taken away your gender-affirming care. Military officers dressed in brown stormed into our house, clearing our counter of estrogen with a jagged knife, roughly yanked out your puberty blocker. You dreamed that in fighting these actions in court, our family lost our home and had to move to a dilapidated house where the roof was falling in. This administration is, quite literally, your worst nightmare. Years earlier, we painted your nursery blue. We ordered pizza and invited friends over to paint puffy white clouds on the ceiling. I was so proud of the airplane mobile I found to hang over your crib and imagined you gazing up at your blue sky. When you were 2, you picked out the pink dress your sister would wear home from the hospital. You covered her in kisses when we placed her in your arms. We were a home of dress up, a home of pick your own clothes, a home of practice making good choices. There are so few things little bodies have control of. Picking your own clothes felt like the right first domain for us to place in your capable hands. I remember holding your baby body over your dresser drawer and waiting for your tiny arms to reach for one of the 2 options I would set out. As you learned to dress yourself, your outfit combinations brought your dad and I so much joy. Rain boots with plaid dress shorts, colorful t-shirts with a fishing vest. Frequently, the outfit was topped with a bike helmet. When your sister started to toddle, there was a dress you loved in her closet. Even today, I can see it hanging there, just at your eyeline. A soft cotton tank dress with a flowing tutu skirt, blue and white stripes on it. Seeing you smile and twirl, how could I discourage you? Instead, the words that would become my mantra came to my lips. Boys can do anything girls can do. Your bubble of confidence and joy was so strong, I could almost see it. I prayed that bubble would protect you and remain intact. As you asked questions, I gave you the best answers I could in words and definitions I hoped were clear and comforting. Boys have penises and girls have vaginas. I told you this definition early on as you helped me change your sister's diaper. Later, I learned that my early definition of gender was flawed. It defined gender solely in anatomical terms when in fact the qualities that we typically connect to gender include several independent variables that exist on a spectrum, including our bodies, gender identity, and gender presentation or expression. Your closet began to fill with dresses and skirts in addition to your favorite blue plaid dress shorts and rain boots. For the next 2 years, we thought we had a son who occasionally wore dresses and other times wore suits, bike helmets, rain boots, and wild color combinations. Life was busy, and we focused on parenting 2 preschoolers the best way we could. You were a voracious reader. At age 5, you could read confidently on your own. Your preschool library had an LGBTQI+ section. One spring day in your preschool classroom, you found the book, I Am Jazz, in the school library. It was in that book that you first learned the word transgender. You later told me that a light went on inside you when you read the lines, I have a girl brain in a boy body. This is called transgender, and I was born this way. Today I'm sad to tell you, dear one, that sweet libraries and books like the one that lit you up are disappearing each day as pro-censorship extremists strip schools of inclusive materials and curricula. From the moment you learned the word transgender, it took a few months for you to find the words to tell me about this revelation. I was sitting on the sunny floor of your grandmother's living room playing with you and your sister when you told me you were transgender. Somehow, I had the presence of mind to open the voice recorder on my phone. Today, you listen back to the recording. It makes us giggle at the chaos that is a conversation with a 5-year-old and her interjecting 3-year-old sibling. But through all the interruptions, the thread of the conversation comes through clearly. You said, sometimes I feel like a boy and sometimes I feel like a girl. So I said, do you think people who are transgender feel the same or different from how you feel? You said, quietly, but clearly, it feels the same. So I said, does it bother you that you have a boy body? And even more quietly, you said, I don't like being a boy very much. It was fall when you made the same declaration to your kindergarten class. In the recess line, this time you were more definitive. I am a girl like Jazz. You told them to call you by a new name. The next day we were running errands as a family. Crossing the street, I swung you by your hand up the curb and said, how is my sweet daughter? The words felt forced on my tongue, and I felt a flutter of doubt in my heart until I saw your face. Your eyes widened, and you looked up at me, and then you wrapped my legs in a tight hug and said, Mommy, thank you for calling me daughter. I felt my eyes well up with tears. This was the first moment I understood how important it was to you. This wasn't just an experiment or playing pretend or a call for attention. You are my daughter. I'd like to say that this was the end of your transition, but there were still doubts and still enough moments when you would tell us, I feel like a boy today, that would let us default back to what was familiar. Your dad and I had endless conversations about how best to support you. It's easy to say, follow your child's lead. It's much harder to find balance in that practice. It was spring when your dad represented us at your parent-teacher conference. Your teachers told us that they noticed you had become subdued. You didn't have the same spark of joy they were used to. When they asked you if you had a message for us, you told them 3 things. You wanted us to get one of the toys they had in the classroom at home. You wanted us to use she, her pronouns and your new name all the time. You wanted to enroll in 1st grade as a girl. This moment hit us both like a ton of bricks. We had noticed your fading joy too. We realized that we needed to listen better. At first, I think I hesitated to throw my full support behind your social transition because I was afraid that your life would be more difficult, that people would treat you badly, or that they would judge me as a mother. I was also sad that the future I dreamed for you would be different than what I had imagined with so much anticipation. And I think part of me was indignant that the future wasn't something within my control, that your identity included something I didn't already know intimately. It took me time to understand that those responses were all about me, not you. Because you didn't need to transition. You always knew who you were and did an amazing job expressing that identity consistently, persistently, and insistently. The rest of us had to transition to see you for who you are. I was focused on the wrong things, and it took me time to start concentrating on the right things. You and what you needed from me. Today, sweet girl, I'm sad to tell you that teachers like the ones who celebrated you for expressing yourself and that helped you share that message with us are being persecuted around our country. My heart goes out to the families who have to travel this journey without that wraparound support. With your teacher's information in hand, we started to reach out for help. We joined groups for parents of gender-expansive children. We found a therapist who felt like a ray of sunshine and helped us understand what you had been trying to tell us. It took a few sessions before the therapist officially told us she believed that you were a transgender girl. Having her support and reassurance was the final piece we needed to understand what it looked like to let you lead the way in your gender journey. From there, it felt easier to fully follow your lead. When you asked us to help you come out to friends or family, we did. When you wanted to change your identity documents to match your gender identity, we filed the paperwork. When you decided you wanted to pause your puberty so you can grow up in a body that feels right to you, we got a medical team to support you. You seem to have built up an instinct to know when you were ready to let people know that special aspect of your identity, and when to let other aspects of your identity take the front seat. Not every conversation has gone smoothly, but you lead each time. It's your choice, and we will do everything we can to make sure it stays that way. I've been clear in each of the not-so-smooth moments that the bias we faced came from a place of misinformation and fear. When the solution to the bias is to separate you from others, I feel my inner mama bear roar. You have a right to exist, to be seen fully, to be treated with dignity and respect. You don't need anyone else's permission to be you. While at some points we've had the protection of the law, the courts, and the federal government on our side, the protections you have had are now under attack. Because you are a well-informed teen, you know that Trump and Project 2025 have already begun executing their detailed game plan to quite literally make your life miserable. Trump and his allies are releasing executive order after executive order, undermining the protections our family has used to stay safe while having the freedom to be fully ourselves. On his first day in office, Trump issued a hateful executive order that defines sex narrowly in an attempt to remove long-standing protections for transgender, non-binary, and intersex people, including under the Affordable Care Act, Title IX, and Title VII. Just yesterday, as I write this, Trump issued another anti-trans executive order, this one banning trans girls and women from playing sports. Having benefited from so many supportive coaches and teammates myself, I've always encouraged you to try out for as many sports as you can. There's nothing I enjoy more than cheering you on as you stretch yourself in the sports you are now so passionate about. I still don't quite have the words to explain to you why this is happening. But I can tell you this. Trans and non-binary students still have civil rights protection at school, and this executive order cannot legally take those away. And I will continue to fight for your right to be supported and challenged through sports. Trump is also attacking people's ability to get passports that align with their gender identity. I'll never forget the tears in your eyes the only time we traveled with a passport that didn't align with your gender identity and name, months after your social transition. I felt the pain in my own gut when you had to tell the official you were the person represented on the passport, an answer to the name and gender we had long since left behind. We promised you we would never travel with that passport again, and thanks to protections from the federal government at that time, we were able to change your gender marker and name on your passport a few short months after making you that promise. But thanks to Trump's flurry of executive orders on January 20th, other parents like me can't promise their children they'll be able to change their passports to their correct gender. Though this administration is trying to undermine it, Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, a law that protects against sex discrimination in schools, has been a shield. Years ago, when your elementary school said they couldn't adjust your name and gender in their records, we had clear guidance from the Obama administration to remind them that under Title IX, any school receiving federal funding had no grounds to discriminate on the basis of gender identity. Anytime you've asked to try out for a new sports team or club, we've had the protection of Title IX to know we can check the female box with confidence. Since then, the Supreme Court's decision in Bostock and other federal court decisions make it clear that your rights under Title IX still exist, even if they are not recognized by this administration. In another executive order, Trump spread lies about gender-affirming care, threatening to revoke federal funding for any healthcare provider that offers gender-affirming care to minors. We know that the gender-affirming care you receive means you sleep better at night. But it's more than just your sleep quality. You told me recently if it hadn't been for the support of your father and me, you probably wouldn't be alive today. Having sat with you through many dark nights, I believe you, and I will do anything and everything I can to defend you, to care for you in the best way I can, and to surround you with as much love and support as I can muster. The fight ahead can feel overwhelming. In some states, parents making the same choices we have made are being monitored by Child Protective Services, prosecuted for crossing state lines to receive care, or threatened online and in their communities. Every day, it feels like there's a new executive order, a new attack we need to urgently investigate and understand. Trump is attempting to overwhelm us with lies and threats to make these attacks your reality. But bigger than my fear of the future is my faith in the power of humanity. I have seen in myself how someone can change their firmly held beliefs and definitions. I believe that most people want children to live up to their fullest future selves, and I believe that what is holding many people back from giving their full support and advocacy to gender-affirming care is fear and misinformation. That morning after the election, your fear seemed overwhelming, and I wanted to say something that would help. So I said, remember, honey, it's our job to keep you safe. You just have to worry about being a kid and enjoying your life. Your response hit me in the gut. You said, yeah, Mom, but it's not just about me. You're right, sweet daughter. It is not just about you. So I share your story here in the hopes that others will find their fight in our story. Because the future we dream of for you is also a future that is brighter for them. No matter what happens, I will continue to roar when the world tries to strip you of your dignity. You are a piece of my heart, and I will never stop fighting for your right to exist.
2 weeks away, look what happens. Jalen put the hurt on the Eagles. Kendrick Lamar is a megastar. Has anybody checked on Drake? Unrivaled is having a one-on-one basketball throwdown, and things keep getting worse for trans people. Hello again, everybody. This is Transposition Sports. I'm Carly Chardonnay Webb, and in my time off, I've seen things shift in an ugly direction in regards to trans people in sports, and the latest shift was Monday. World Athletics announced a change in their nearly 2-year-old policy on transgender women and cisgender women with differences in sexual development. Now, policy revisions are set to come later in 2025 after some recommendations from a working group on gender diverse athletes that have met in the last year. Among the recommendations from this working group, formally affirm the design and goals of the female category, revise the eligibility regulations so that they are consistent with the design and goals, merge the DSD and transgender regulations, and if the effect is to restrict opportunities for DSD athletes, adopt measures to address the reliant interests of those who are currently in the pipeline. Adopt a pre-clearance requirement for all athletes competing in the female category, and consider forward initiatives, including support for elite gender diverse XY athletes. In response, World Athletics President Sebastian Coe stated, while our current eligibility regulations for DSD and transgender athletes are robust and based on the science available at the time of our last consultation, several scientific developments in this field have emerged since then, and it is our role as the global governing body for athletics to ensure that our guidelines keep up with the latest information available and to maintain a fair and level playing field in the female category. Some believe this could lead to changes that would reverse a ban on trans women in women's competition that were put in place back in 2023. But this could also work in the other way as well. It could mean a tightening or elimination of athletes that are in a similar position as South Africa's 2-time Olympic champion Caster Semenya, who refused to compete under a testosterone limit that was put in place by those same regulatory changes in 2023. The regulations called for a serum testosterone limit of 2.5 nanomoles per liter held for at least 6 months prior to approval for competition and then must be maintained from then on. This rule affected a number of athletes, not just Semenya, but others such as Namibian sprint stars Christine Mbuma and Beatrice Masalenge. For Coe, this process has been a cornerstone of his candidacy for president of the IOC, which will be decided in elections that will be held at the IOC's session in March, from March 18th to the 21st. Now, on March 5th, the consult period for the revision ends. Between now and March 5th, World Athletics seeks to gain the opinion of competing athletes on the recommendations. Now, these changes come amid the massive directives that are taking place here in the United States. On February 5th, Donald Trump put forth an executive order banning transgender women and girls from women's and girls' sports, and Coe, via X.com, heartily endorsed it. The next day, the NCAA slapped an immediate ban on transgender women in their women's competitions after 13 years of inclusive practice. The immediate effect is that the ban ended the season for perhaps the most prominent transgender student athlete right now, Rochester Institute of Technology track and field athlete Sadie Schreiner. The reaction of trans athletes and advocates was swift and harsh against the NCAA's action.
The NCAA quietly released a new policy on its website today. And if you happen to see the previous policy that was 3 phases and multiple steps and was very confusing, this policy is 1 page, it is incredibly scaled down and very direct. The new NCAA policy says that anyone, regardless of their sex assignment at birth, can participate on men's teams. And for anyone who is competing on a men's team and is taking any sort of hormone therapy, i.e. trans men who would be taking testosterone, they need to get medical clearance in order to do so. In the women's category, eligibility is broken down by assignment at birth. This flags to me as important because it is mirroring the executive orders of the president in trying to legislate away trans and non-binary identities and really just sticking to this very binary system. The policy for women's athletics goes on to say that anyone assigned male at birth is eligible to practice, but not participate in games or championships with the women's team. And it says that anyone assigned female at birth may participate in the women's team, but they cannot be taking any form of hormone therapy. There are intersex women, women with PCOS, and other conditions that might require them to take hormone therapy for their health, and there's no opportunity to apply for a medical exemption as per this policy. It seems pretty clear to me that the NCAA was just waiting for the executive order to come out so it could change its policy as well.
On the other side, the White House brought in supporters, including former University of Kentucky swimmer turned anti-trans activist Riley Gaines, and put together a video touting the new executive order and at the same time demonizing a number of transgender women in sports, including Shriner and 2022 NCAA swimming champion Leah Thomas.
This executive order is among other executive orders and other legislative moves to further police bodies and police who is woman enough to fit into that category and be allowed to compete. Republicans in positions of power are trying to control and limit our autonomy and how we can live our lives. And if it wasn't me, it would have been the next trans woman.
Thomas is also a target, along with the NCAA and the Ivy League, of another lawsuit from a group of former competitors claiming that they were the victims of Thomas being able to compete. Thomas is also the impetus behind the latest proposal put forth by the professional transphobes. The U.S. Department of Education demanded Wednesday that the NCAA immediately strip all titles and awards from all transgender student athletes throughout the history of the NCAA. Never mind that when those said athletes earned their accolades, they were fully eligible to compete by the rules. Now, what would this mean? That would mean the scrapping of a grand total of 2 national titles. CeCe Telfer's national track title in Division II in 2019, Leah Thomas's NCAA swim championship in 2022. It also scrapped 4 All-Americans. Telfer, Thomas, plus former Yale University swimmer Isaac Hennick, who earned All-American status in 2022, and Sadie Shriner, who earned All-American status twice last season and is really getting bit by all this nonsense right now because she's an active student athlete. Her season has pretty much ground to a halt, and she was considered one of the top threats at 200 meters and 400 meters in Division III. When we come back, an example of why the Protect Women's sports crowd are selling you a falsehood. That and more to come. Stay with us. This is Transposition Sports.
I interrupt Transposition Sports because I'm cute and I can. And for this message from the angry gay grandpa. You don't pay me enough for this, Carly.
So maybe I'll start a little bit softer.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine.
Dad?
Before you say anything, I just want to apologize for what I said this morning. I've been doing a lot of thinking. If you want to change your name, if you want to wear a dress.
It's a skirt, Dad.
Skirt? I don't know the kind of support you need, but let's get you some for all this transgender stuff.
Wait. Are you serious? Dad, what is this?
Oh, this is me supporting you. This is me saying I love you. This is me not losing you.
Love you, Dad.
Love you. Holly.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
The body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America, and I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is what it is.
Well, on this episode of things that are more important than actual trans Americans in this world, right? The Gulf of Mexico, which has been named the Gulf of Mexico since the day that I was born, is now bearing a new name, the Gulf of America. And if you decide that you do not want to gender affirm this new name, the president and all of the staff are going to ban you from being able to report about anything in the White House. But you know what's really funny about this is that actual trans Americans and actual people with actual pulses and lives that contribute and are tax-paying citizens to America cannot get the same amount of respect. You know what I think is really funny is that everybody understands affirmation and what it means to actually accept things that people tell you because it makes them feel better to hear it. But when we actually have that conversation about human beings, y'all act like y'all forget. Interesting. As my ignorant and sometimes very problematic friends will say, it's mama named it the Gulf of Mexico. I'ma call it the Gulf of Mexico.
1 week after the Trump administration claimed it was protecting and saving women's sports, the Department of Education just screwed over female athletes. And this guidance is going to cost women in sports millions of dollars. Today, the Department of Education released guidance that says that Title IX does not apply to name, image, and likeness deals. Name, image, and likeness deals, also known as NIL, is the way in which college athletes can get paid through sponsorships and endorsements. This new ruling rescinds the Biden-era guidance that said that any money that was distributed in NIL deals needed to be equally distributed between men and women's athletes. Not anymore. In the past, when NIL deals were happening, the money at most major colleges and universities was going towards the athletes who are the ones that generate the most income. This is our football players and our men's basketball teams mostly. In those schools, female athletes were receiving about 5% of the total NIL dollars. The hypocrisy is wild. Literally just a week ago, the executive order came out to ban trans athletes, saying that it would protect and save women's sports. And yet here he is allowing millions of dollars to be pulled from women athletes and given to men.
Welcome back to Transposition Sports, and you just heard Chris Mosier say that it seems equalization of NIL funds that the Biden administration was trying to do won't get done thanks to the new gang in Washington. Now notice who won't talk about what Chris Mosier just talked about. Yep, it's all the crowd who claim that they want to save women's sports because they're on the Trump train.
We're honored to be joined today by many incredible advocates for women's sports, including the brave swimmer at the forefront of this battle. And Riley Gaines is a person that I've been watching.
You saw that just earlier in that ad. They handed the White House an ad to another means to kick transgender Americans who play sports while they're down. But there's also another example I want to touch on. The Super Bowl ads. You know, there were two great, excellent ads during the Super Bowl this past weekend that were cheering on women's sports. One was done by the National Football League, and it was touting their hope to put girls varsity flag football in every state in the union. It was a great ad. It featured USA flag football junior national team quarterback Kilolo Westerland, who, as a Nevada high schooler, 17 years old, kicks a lot of butt on a football field. And this ad, she was making fools out of some of the goofiest 80s era dude bros this side of the alpha betas from Revenge of the Nerds, with Marshawn Lynch as the Greek chorus in this ad. Now, one particular person really took offense to it, and that was Marcy Smith. She's a co-founder of the Independent Council on Women's Sports, an anti-trans advocacy group. She said, quote, "Why is the world obsessed with showing women playing sports against men? Give us our own sports and stop comparing us."
Marshy, that's really disingenuous of you, given that that is what your kind does all the time. If you're not saying that Allison Felix gets outran by 300 high school boys, or similar ways of just punching down on women's athletes, or doing what many of you did, call a cisgender woman who boxes for Algeria and another one for Taiwan men when they are cisgender women. You guys also tout websites like Boys vs. Women, a site that compares times between women Olympians and say high school boys are faster. Never mind that women and men don't race each other at all, don't compete each other at all. No, it's a weird way, for people who say that they really want to protect women's sports, you spend an awful time belittling it. I'm just saying. And there was the Nike ad. Nike's first Super Bowl ad in 27 years. You had Grammy winner Doechii narrating this star-studded manifesto that perfectly captures the current era where everyone watches women's sports. It took all the bromides and dismissals of women playing sports, the things that you'll say to a Jordan Childs or a Sha'Carri Richardson or a Caitlin Clark that you can't win, and then added the twist that these stars, no matter what you say, are bringing the fans in the seats. They say you can't win, so win. Well, one person that really doesn't want you to win is a certain former gymnast named Jennifer Say. See, she's the founder of XXXY Athletics. They're a firm that's trying to use transphobia as an activewear fashion statement. This was her criticism, quote, "The only things female athletes are told they can't do is stand up for the integrity of their sports and for keeping men out of women's sports." Say's company has Riley Gaines featured as an ambassador. And they also put together an ad that's running on social media right now that tries to sell athletes like Gaines and former Nevada volleyball player Celia Lilly as victims against the supposed pro-trans majority in the media. Besides the obvious fallacy that the media is pro-trans when the fact is trans people can't get platformed on most media to talk about these issues, there's the common denominator in all this, that all of these people and these anti-trans groups and the right-wing sports media sites that they get in alliance with willfully miss the point of the NFL ad and the Nike ad and attempt to sell who they really are. They're the Karens against women's sports because they don't really care about women's sports. They only care about transphobia. Ms. Smith, Ms. Gaines, and all the rest of you Karens, understand this. Listen closely. You can't protect what you don't respect. What engagement do any of you have on women's sports outside of beating up on trans people who play? I mean, really, Riley Gaines, what engagement do you have in swimming outside of reminding us time and time again that Leah Thomas has been living in your head rent-free for almost 3 years now? Are any of you following this great Unrivaled 1v1 tournament they're having right now? Are you even following the Unrivaled season? Because it's been a lot of fun. Do you have engagement with, say, NCAA women's hockey having a great year, or NCAA women's basketball? Do you have any engagement with any of the athletes in any of those ads or any of these initiatives towards getting more girls out on a playing field? Do you? I'd be willing to say the answer is no, because I see what you do, I see what you support. You are standing with a president who's willing to take away your reproductive rights. You are standing alongside people in the sports media who've always demeaned and belittled women's sports. You have podcasts under their umbrellas. You always go on their shows. But yet, when it comes down to it, you're standing with people that have never respected women's sports. And just a note to cisgender women who are in sports, who may be kind of in the middle of this, understand something. You see, when the Karens against women's sports are bashing me and using you to do it, see, they believe two things. One, transgender women are not women. Number two, you cisgender woman stinks at sports. They really believe that. You see in the way that they try and sell the issue.
understand that when they do what they do, they're not bashing on me. Heck, I'm used to it. I'm expecting them to bash on me, but they're really bashing on you. And they're bashing on the Caitlin Clark. And they're bashing on the Sha'Carri Richardson. And they're bashing on the Juju Watkins. They're bashing. These are the people that will bash on a GOAT like Serena Williams. Think about that. You can't protect what you don't respect. Hashtag just saying. Finally tonight, I shout out for some trans joy. I talked about the NCAA policy on transgender inclusion. It came out in 2011. From 2011 to now, there have been 33 out transgender student athletes in NCAA competition, contrary to those who are trying to sell you hysteria. There's been 33. Of those 33, 19 of them are transgender men. Oops. They don't sell the hysteria, do they? Among those 19 is a guy I happen to know and got to interview a couple years back named Taylor Edelman. Taylor Edelman played volleyball at State University of New York at Purchase in Division III. Edelman played for the women's volleyball team while he was also trying to figure everything out. Then he realized, I know what my true north is, and not only do I want to live it, I want to compete as such. He transitioned it, and after 2 years on the women's team, he played the rest of his career on the men's team and became a team captain in his senior year. He was among the first transgender student athletes under the NCAA regulations, passed in 2011, to play authentically. He's an advocate for trans youth in Connecticut these days, and an advocate for better health care as well. And last week, he was at the state capitol testifying for an initiative called SJ35, which seeks to put a constitutional amendment on the state ballot that would encode protections for sexual orientation, gender identity, and bodily autonomy for every citizen in the state of Connecticut into the state constitution. Here's a piece of what Edelman had to say.
My name is Taylor Edelman. I'm a resident of Brookfield. I'm also a husband and a father. I'm here today in strong support of SJ35 because I know firsthand what it means to live in a world where trans people are not granted the same dignity and respect as others. This bill is about bodily autonomy. You've heard that a lot. It ensures that no one's denied the right to make decisions about their own body, whether it's accessing gender-affirming healthcare, abortion, reproductive care. The same people trying to restrict trans healthcare are attacking reproductive freedom. This isn't about protection, it's about control. I've lived in this state my entire life, more than 30 years. I'm really lucky to have a family that loves and supports me. That's not the norm. As we know, hatred is escalating at an unprecedented and alarming rate. Since questioning folks' experiences has been, a hot topic tonight about discrimination they've experienced, I've actually been threatened. My life has been threatened. I've gone to the police to get a restraining order and was not granted it by a judge. So please, let's not all lives matter this conversation. You may not be able to legislate behavior, but by passing this, you will make it known this is not welcome. Over a decade ago, I was one of the first out NCAA transgender athletes in this country. I played over a decade ago, and since then, only 44 of us have been out, and only a few have gone on to win championships. Back then, there was barely a whisper or outrage, no national campaigns, no state legislatures stripping us of our rights. So why now? The answer is simple. This is a manufactured outrage. Trans people have always existed. Trans people have always competed in sports, but now we're being used as scapegoats in a culture war designed to distract from real issues like healthcare, housing, and racial and economic injustice. Why so much emphasis on a community that makes up approximately 1 to 5% of the US population? Because we threaten long-held institutions and beliefs ingrained in us that we have set roles and that we only exist to make money and to reproduce. While politicians and media figures stoke fear, it's trans youth who suffer. Kids just trying to go to school, play sports like me, and live their lives are being targeted, banned from healthcare, and forced into hiding. I was one of those kids. Remember, kids are typically beholden to their caregivers, therefore their voices are lost. Kids know a lot more than we give them credit for. I wish I had access to puberty blockers. I'd probably be a lot taller. I'm a little salty about it. I knew I was trans when I was 4 years old, but I had no language for it. I waited 18 years before I even met another out trans person. No child should have to wait that long to see themselves reflected in the world. To those who oppose this bill, gender is not something anyone can opt out of. We all perform it every day. It's a show, people. Yet trans people are punished for it, and the opposition's argument steeped in hypocrisy, like a tea. The same people calling gender affirming care radical have no issue with breast augmentation, hormone therapy for menopause, or penile implants. When cis people seek gender affirming care, it's called healthcare. When we do, it's called ideology or chemical and surgical mutilation. Or as someone earlier said, we have underlying mental health issues. Wonder where that came from. The DSM, homosexuality was not taken out fully until the 80s. The mental duress comes from the systems, comes from the interpersonal relationships that oppress us. So with that, I urge you to please vote in favor of SJ 35.
What you just heard is an example of the power of sport and the power of sport to bring people into the tent and bring them together. That's something that the Marchie Smiths, Jennifer Says, Riley Gaines, and anyone else who's among their ilk will never understand, and they really don't want to. See, the thing that bothers me the most about the actions we're seeing, be it the Trump executive order, the NCAA's capitulation to that order, or all the other measures at the federal and state levels that are trying to remove transgender people from sport and from public life as a whole, is that sport is something that I love, and it's being used in such a vulgar way. And that's something I'll fight against with every fiber of my being. Sports at its best brings people together, and it builds new friendships. It can build family. It did for me when I walked up to a tent at a Pride Festival 2 years ago, and someone said, "Hey, we're a team for all women." And that was my initiation into what's become a football family for me. And in 2 months' time, I look forward to getting back out there on that field with my sisters, with my family, and getting into the fray again. There are some that say sports shouldn't be political. Well, guess what? They've been political since the ancient Greeks, and you know something? That's not a bad thing. Remember, the ancient Olympics were not just a sport and cultural festival, they also included a truce. All wars ceased during the Olympics, and all sides in the conflicts were encouraged to come to the games, sit at the table, let's work it out. That tradition carries, at least in a superficial way, to this day. The fact that sports has been used in the fashion that the Karens against women's sports are using it is repugnant to me. And it's something I'll resist, because somewhere out there, some kid who may be trans, may be non-binary, may be different from the norm, but they have that gleam in their eye and that will to compete, and they should have the opportunity to live the dream. And no one should take it away from them out of their own fears, their own hysteria, or their own bigotry. For Transposition Sports, I'm Carly Chardonnay Webb.
Oh boy. All right. Well, thank you so much, Carly, for putting that together for us. Where is it? There it is. I don't know if you're still, oh, that's Steph. Hold on. There you are. Sorry about that. I had the wrong one pulled up. Oh. Yeah, we don't need Stephanie up. Stephanie stepped away to do the Valentine's Day thing. But I tell you what, I got a couple more stories to cover if you can hang around for about 10 more minutes with me.
Certainly, let's do it.
All right, let's see. So these are better stories, I think, than what I had at the beginning of the show. You be the judge, because this story is actually about a judge. So convenient.
Okay.
Federal judge pauses President Trump's orders to restricting gender affirming care for trans youth. Trans kids deserve to grow up safely. I like that sign. Treat trans teens, obviously. A federal judge on Thursday temporarily blocked President Donald Trump's recent executive order aimed at restraining gender-affirming health care for transgender people under the age of 19. The judge's ruling came after a lawsuit was filed earlier this month on behalf of families with transgender or non-binary children who allege their health care has already been compromised. A national group for families of LGBTQ plus people and a doctors organization are also plaintiffs in the court challenge. One of many lawsuits opposing a slew of executive orders Trump has issued as he seeks to reverse the policies of former President Joe Biden. Judge Brendan Herson, who was nominated by Biden, granted the plaintiff's request for a temporary restraining order following a hearing in federal court in Baltimore. The restraining order, which lasts 14 days but could be extended, essentially puts Trump's directive on hold while the case proceeds. That means medical institutions can't have their federal funding pulled because they provide gender-affirming care services. The restraining order is nationwide in scope and will apply to institutions across the country. Attorneys for the government didn't indicate whether they plan to appeal it. Shortly after taking office, Trump signed an executive order directing federally run insurance programs to exclude coverage for such services. That includes Medicaid, which covers gender-affirming care in some states, and TRICARE for military families. Trump also signed an earlier executive order that narrowly defined the sexes of male and female while commanding that federal funds shall not be used to promote gender ideology. The lawsuit includes several accounts for families of appointments being canceled as medical institutions react to the new directive. Some hospitals immediately paused gender-affirming care, including prescriptions for puberty blockers and hormone therapy. Those immediately impacted were a main focus of the hearing Thursday afternoon when Herson repeatedly asked attorneys on both sides to discuss the risk associated with allowing Trump's orders to take full effect and continue limiting healthcare access. Herson directly challenged the assertion that the president's goal is to protect transgender youth. And the order seems to deny that this population even exists or deserve to exist, Herson said. I like this guy. Noting that transgender people already face statistically elevated risk of suicide, poverty, addiction, and other hardships. Disrupting their health care out of the blue could cause them irreparable harm, the judge said in announcing his ruling. Attorneys for the government argued that Trump, through his orders, was simply directing federal agencies to take lawful steps to carry out his policies preferences. They said the orders weren't aimed at restricting health care access for transgender youth, but rather a decision from the president on how his administration would distribute federal funding. But the plaintiff's attorney said the orders are unlawful and unconstitutional because they violate anti-discrimination laws while infringing on the rights of parents. Dozens of transgender people and advocates rallied outside the courthouse in downtown Baltimore before the hearing, holding signs and waving pride flags while upbeat music played from a nearby speaker. "We will not be erased," said Aya Damons, executive director of nonprofit Baltimore Safe Haven, which provides services to trans people. "We've been here before, and we're not going back. Shortly before the hearing began, the group filed slowly into the courtroom, filling its large gallery and listening attentively as the attorneys delivered their arguments. Lee Binder, a Trans Maryland, said some of the transgender community's most vulnerable members are being used as political pawns. So it's important to show solidarity. Trump's approach on the issues represent an abrupt change from the Biden administration, which sought to explicitly extend civil rights protection to transgender people. Trump has used strong language in opposing gender-affirming care, asserting falsely that medical professionals are maiming and sterilizing a growing number of impressionable children under the radical and false claim that adults can change a child's sex. And that's a direct quote from Trump there. Major medical groups such as the American Medical Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics support access to gender-affirming care. Young people who persistently identify as a gender that is different from their sex assigned at birth are first evaluated by a team of professionals. Some may try to socialize or try a social transition involving changing a hairstyle or pronouns. Some may later also receive puberty blockers or hormones. Surgery is extremely rare for minors. Like legal challenges to state bans on gender-affirming care, the recent lawsuit alleges the policy is discriminatory because it allows federal funds to cover the same treatment when they're not used for gender transition. The suits also say Trump is overstepping his presidential authority by seeking to withhold federal funds previously authorized by Congress. The judge's ruling was a victory for transgender youth and their parents, said Omar Gonzalez-Pagan, an attorney from Lambda Legal representing the plaintiffs. He said hopefully hospitals that canceled appointments will start rescheduling them in light of the temporary restraining order that protects their funding. I hope that this is bringing joy and a sense of security that these families need right now, he said. In remarks that to reporters after the hearing, he said the next step is to keep fighting. Across the country, the unlawful orders from the president have sown fear among transgender youth and confusion among their providers. Joshua Block, an attorney from the American Civil Liberties Union, who also represents the plaintiffs, said in a written statement after the hearing, but today's decision should restore both their access to health care and protection under the Constitution. All right. So, as far as this goes, Carly, are you still with me? Or did I put you to sleep?
I'm still here.
All right.
Well, it's good. It's nice to hear that at least one judge has their head thoroughly in the game right now, which is not a bad thing.
Right. We need people that are thinking things through here. It has a longer article than I was expecting. I started losing my place. Anyway, I got one more thing. It's also some good news.
Okay, we can always use that.
Yep. So let's see. We're going to do this one. All right. Trans youth care ban vetoed by Kansas governor again. All right, Kansas.
Lori Kelly just keeps giving, doesn't she?
Yes. So Kansas Governor Lori Kelly, or Laura Kelly, has vetoed Senate Bill 63, which would have restricted gender-affirming care for transgender youth. Right now, the legislator should be focused on ways to help Kansas cope with rising prices, Kelly said in a statement emailed late Tuesday. That is the most important issue for Kansans. That is where my focus is. The bill would bar healthcare providers from administering gender-affirming medical care, including puberty suppressants and hormone therapies for someone under the age of 18, only for the purpose of gender transitioning. The ban would also apply to gender-affirming surgeries. Infringing on parental rights is not appropriate, nor is it a Kansas value, said Kelly in her veto message. As I've said before, it is not the job of politicians to stand between a parent and a child who needs medical care of any kind. This legislation will also drive families, businesses, and healthcare workers out of our state, stifling our economy and exacerbating our workforce shortage issues. This is the third time Kelly has vetoed similar transgender youth care bills, but the bills may now have the support to pass. The bill passed the state legislature with flying colors, passing the House 83rd through 35th, and the Senate, no, that's not, okay, so that's the voting. Okay, passing at the House level at 83 to 35 and the Senate at 32 to 8. In 2023, the attempts to override a past trans care ban veto lost the House 82 to 43. State Republicans quickly denounced Kelly's veto. The governor's devotion to extreme left-wing ideology knows no bounds, vetoing a bipartisan bill that prevents the mutilation of minors, said Senator Ty Masterson in an online statement. The Senate stands firmly on the side of protecting Kansas children and will swiftly override her veto before the ink from her pen is dried. So there's challenges coming at this. Top national medical associations such as the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and more than 20 others argue that gender-affirming care is safe, effective, beneficial, and medically necessary for the transgender population. Kelly joins governors past and present in Ohio and Arkansas in vetoing bills that target gender-affirming youth care. However, both of their vetoes were overridden. Across the country, trans youth care restrictions have faced legal hurdles in their enforcement. The battle and debate has most recently made its way to the national stage, with the Supreme Court considering U.S. versus Scrimetti, which will decide if Tennessee's law banning some gender-affirming care for transgender minors violates equal protection clause of the U.S. Constitution. So there we have that. Governor Kelly, keep up the good work, but it's just sad to see the slow grinding down of resistance.
I know one person who once again is smiling about that result, and that's Stephanie Byers. Stephanie Byers, former Kansas state representative from Wichita. The first elected, the first elected transgender lawmaker in Kansas's history, and one of the first in the history of the country. And she recently retired she stood down, retired, and moved out of the state. But she was in a lot of these fights, and it is good to see that her example has carried on. And once again, Governor Kelly has done what she's always done. She's held the line. She's one of the few Midwestern governors that's really held the line on this issue. And
the live chats have a little trouble hearing you, Carly. Can you let me pull your mic?
It's just been one of those things where she's held the line for these last few years. She's really held the line, and it's been good to see. But yeah, it's going to be difficult in a lot of those states. I mean, we're in a situation where this nation is going to be half transphobic, half at least livable. That's the situation that we're in right now.
Well, there's been states, and I didn't get to it. Another story that I didn't get to quite yet this week was the Washington State. In my room, one of my roommates actually brought that to my attention, that Washington State had they're pushing through passports within like 3 days with to update your.
They're moving birth certificates right and left right now because they want those things changed as fast as possible. Washington was number one in the Aaron Reed rankings of safest states for transgender people. Washington was number one.
Which state was number one?
Washington was.
Yeah. I'm actually
Aaron Reed does a ranking of, hey, where's safe? What's safe? And Washington was at the top.
They said they're still having trouble here in Ucayali.
I mean, Washington was at the top of the list.
Yeah. Washington, I've seriously considered moving there because we're here, like I'm helping with things around here, but we're only here for till like next November. So after that, I it's kind of open to where I'm going to move. So I've considered moving up to Washington. I've considered making that leap. I don't know. I'm a little nervous about it.
Looking at the top 5 list right now. At the top, yes, number 1, Washington State. 2 was Colorado. 3, Washington, D.C. 4, California. 5, Minnesota.
Yeah, I know Minnesota has, they have certain legislation in place that grants like trans protection. Yeah, they've done good things. All right. Yeah, Washington State. Yep, that's on my list. I'm putting pins and maps. I also considered going back to Illinois. Illinois is not a bad state, just that was the part of the state that I was in Illinois. If I was in a different sector of the state, I might have had a happier life. So I don't know. I might go up to Chicagoland. I might go up to Washington State, California, New Mexico. There's a few places that I feel like Colorado's probably all right. There's safe places for us to go. And like I said, when we talked about the executive orders last week, these things are not making it, they're really not making it past the lower courts, right? They're getting shot down at the lower courts. So have a little bit of faith that things are going to maybe turn around at the lower court level, because, you have people looking at these cases with all these medical organizations having representatives come in on one side to testify. And then the other side, what do you have? Angry Riley Gaines. That's what you got. So hopefully the judges know who to listen to in that dichotomy, right?
Riley Gaines.
Yeah, you put a doctor on one side and Riley Gaines on the other, and then put him in front of a judge.
Problem is, if it's a Trump judge, they may just believe Riley Gaines. You have to understand, as we're seeing conclusively, expertise doesn't matter to these people. Actually knowing what you're talking about for some reason just doesn't matter. And that's what's really sad.
Yeah. Western Washington, especially Kalasia. And yeah, I'm really close to New Mexico right now. And I've really considered New Mexico as a destination, but we'll see.
I know that that the state of New Mexico is trolling Texas and putting ads in Texas newspapers telling medical professionals, hey, having problems working in Texas, come to New Mexico.
Yeah, there's a clinic, a Planned Parenthood clinic that's up the road from us, and the reviews on their website was one of the people was was complaining that they refer you to New Mexico for an abortion if you need one, because you can't do that in Texas. So they refer you out of state, and it made people really mad. But what are you gonna do? All right, I think that's probably enough transpositions for us for tonight. I'm pretty ground down at this point. Did you have any final words for us?
Actually, I can give you a little scoop on what's coming next week.
Yay!
Next week we're gonna have some special interviews. We're gonna have a few special guests. We're gonna have some interviews lined up for this next week. Tell us some stories, and there's something that's going to be brewing this weekend. We will have full coverage of it next week. It's going to be a very interesting happening. It's going to be interesting. So next week, Transposition Sports will have all the details.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much for sticking with us. Please remember I was going to say my tagline for my show. I'll say it here anyway. Be kind and take care, because that's how I say we do it. Love to everybody. Stay strong. Fight the power, and we'll be here again next week and week after that and the week after that until they shut us down. So love and respect.
Much love, everyone. See you next week.